It's time for Recipe of the Day. I will start by saying that baking pork chops is not my favorite way to cook them, but I also just sometimes don't want to have to stand over a stove. I just want it out of sight and doing its own thing. And then baking is a great solution. Now, I'm going to advise that you brine the pork chops before you bake them. Having said that, though, I realize that if we're talking about the kind of day where you just don't feel like doing very much and just want to throw something into the oven, you probably don't want to deal with brining. I totally get it. So I'm going to give instructions both for how to brine them first and how to not brine them first. Either way, you are going to have juicy and delicious pork chops. They'll just be a little bit juicier if you did brine them. Okay, so to start, if you are brining them, you're going to get out a medium-sized bowl and you're mixing together 4 cups of cool water, just like tap water or whatever you like to use that's not hot. You don't want warm water here. And 4 tablespoons of kosher salt. Mix that together until the salt has dissolved, and then you add your pork chops to that. Now, if they are not submerged in that bowl, then you can transfer it to something where they are fully submerged. But you want the pork chop fully covered in the water, and then that gets refrigerated for a minimum of 1 hour, maximum really 2 hours, though. After that, I find it gets too salty. Okay, if you are not brining your pork chops, don't worry, just open up the packet and preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you have brined them, then after that 1 or 2 hours in the brine, you take them out of the brine and pat them dry. You do not rinse them or anything like that. Okay, so now you've got some pork chops that may or may not be brined, and your oven is preheating to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, I should have said at the beginning of this, I'm sorry. We are talking about bone-in pork chops that are 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick. Those are going to be the best ones for doing in the oven. And the reason is that you want them to be in there for long enough that they do start to brown a little bit. So anything thinner is not going to. And anything thicker, well, you don't usually find them thicker. So that's why I don't have anything thicker than that here. Okay, so then you have your patted dry pork chops that may or may not have been brined, and you're putting them on a rimmed baking sheet, and you brush both sides with some cooking oil. The recipe says olive oil, but it doesn't really matter. I often use grapeseed oil. It's less expensive, and I always have it at the side of my stove there. But whatever it is, about 2 tablespoons, you're drizzling all over the pork chops and brushing them on both sides. And then you are sprinkling them with seasonings. Now, if you brined your pork chops already, do not add any salt. Do not add any kind of seasoning blend that contains salt. Okay. Now, if you haven't brined your pork chops, you're going to sprinkle them all over with 1.5 teaspoons of salt. That's total divided between the 4 pork chops on both sides. So 1.5 teaspoons total divided between the 4 pork chops. And then whether you brine them or not, you're also going in with some herbs, about a teaspoon of either dried sage, rosemary, or thyme, or a seasoning blend if you would like. Just don't use one with salt because we've already either brined or salted the chops. And then also 3/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper and 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Really just kind of give everything a nice little sprinkling all over, you know? Then those are going into your nice hot 450 degree Fahrenheit oven until they are cooked through. Now, what temperature is that? According to the USDA, the safe temperature for pork is 145 degrees Fahrenheit. That's still going to be a little bit pink in the middle. And I know a lot of us grew up with pork needing to be cooked to 160 degrees Fahrenheit to be safe. And so that pink can sometimes be a little bit disconcerting for people. If you know that you like your pork more white all the way through, then you're going to go a little bit longer. I'm just going to say, if that is you, give it a try every now and then. So the lowest safe temperature is 145 degrees Fahrenheit. What you're used to is 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Try taking them out at 152 and letting them rest and see if they're a little bit juicier. It's just a little bit better, kind of like the difference between a well-done steak and a medium-done steak. You know what I mean? So give it a try. But you want minimum 145 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use an instant read thermometer to get that. And that's going to take about 15 to 17 minutes. Then you're going to let them rest for 5 minutes just to let everything settle in so that when you do cut into them, the juices don't go all flowing all over your plate. You want them to stay in the meat so they end up in your mouth. And that is it. There are your juicy, mostly hands-off pork chops baked in the oven. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is October 25th of 2024. And I have a favor to ask of you. If you make this recipe and love it, or if you have made any of the recipes from either of my websites, cookthestory.com or thecookful.com, and you really liked them, head over to those recipes and leave a comment and a 5-star rating. Those comments really help me know what you're liking and not liking. They let me know that you made it, which also makes me feel happy. And it lets other people know like what you've done, what you thought. And then the 5-star rating, that also helps people know that you like the recipe. But more importantly to me is it helps more people find these recipes online. You know, when you're searching on Google and you see those little 5 stars next to the different recipes, you might be more likely to click on those. So if you give those 5-star ratings to my recipes, more people are likely to come over, and that helps me grow my business. So any recipes that you've made from my sites that you've enjoyed, go and leave those comments and ratings for them now. Thank you so much. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.